A common claim made by evolutionists is that there is no evidence for creation or a global flood. However, when you look at creationist websites or other material, they show loads of evidence. So, what is the cause of this disparity? The first thing to note is that evolutionists have been presented with the evidence exclusively from an atheistic, naturalistic, materialistic perspective. This is regardless of whether or not the person actually believes in God. They have been trained where they went to school to see the evidence exclusively from an atheistic, naturalistic, materialistic perspective. Furthermore, only explanations based on that perspective are provided, with the evidence being interpreted for them through those explanations. In other words, one reason they think there is no evidence for creation or a global flood is that it has never been shown that evidence from a perspective where either of these events would be possible explanations. Unfortunately, in many cases, their hearts have been so hardened against any alternative that they will never be even capable of looking at the evidence from a biblical perspective. It is also likely that within their education or from other sources, they experience direct attacks against creation and a global flood, leading them to believe that they have been proven false. Not only are such attacks against biblical creation and the Genesis flood based entirely on atheistic naturalistic materialism, but the attacks on the Genesis flood are frequently based on outdated early models for the flood. For example, they will often depict the Genesis flood as nothing but a lot of rain, even though current modeling shows there to be a lot more involved, including things such as accelerated tectonic activity. Ultimately, such claims boil down to the fact that the evolutionists claiming there is no evidence for creation or a global flood have been taught by secular and often atheistic teachers that there is no evidence and that these events have been proven to be false. In other words, most people making these claims do not have any real idea as to what they are talking about, but are just parroting what they have heard from teachers and other sources. Such claims are not really that there is no evidence for creation or a global flood, but there being no evidence that the person making the claim will accept. There's a huge difference. Finally, as will be presented in other articles in the series, abundant evidence for both creation and a global flood exists, but it is either ignored or interpreted under an atheistic, naturalistic, materialistic worldview under which such events are philosophically impossible. Teacher articles in this series will deal with specific pieces of evidence for creation or a global flood.